Well, the wheel they keep on turning, but we're stuck in second gear. Gonna have my chimpanzee chauffeur get me out of here. Oh, she my chimpanzee chauffeur, and she know how to evade the law. Ooh, she my chimpanzee chauffeur, she gets good mileage and knows the score. Ooh. Oh, she my chimpanzee chauffeur, and she sure can drive a stick. She my chimpanzee chauffeur, and she sure do get around. She my chimpanzee chauffeur, and she sure do drive me wild. Tuberculosis. And that was a rambling McPheffin Tuberculosis Jones with his song Chimpanzee Chauffeur. And that song goes back to 1928 and was originally recorded on the Whoops label out of Connecticut. I'm sorry, Marjorie. Anyway...
You're listening to the sweet sounds of the After Movie Diner with your host, John Cross.
I'm ready for my audio close-up, Mr. De Wallace. Hello?
Shouldn't you move the phone closer to you then?
Hello, I'm Norman Desmond.
I'm Desmond Norman.
Desmond Norman. And tonight, Norman Desmond and Desmond Norman will be discussing the film Norman, which is a film that we made back in 1950. No, it's not true at all. It'll be
I wish we had, though.
Sunset Boulevard, which we just watched
Sunset Boulevard
at the Roxy Tribeca.
Yes, we did.
And now we are here in the smooth jazz Muzak stylings of Tribeca Kitchen.
Yes.
And this was the first time you've seen this film?
Yes, I have never seen Sunset Boulevard. And that's not to say that I'm some kind of Johnny cinema come lately Philistine who only watches movies with Vin Diesel in them.
No, you went through a period of watching mad French films.
I only watched French films for like a year.
Like French films on VHS.
I was, to be fair.
So no, I have to paint the picture of people. So anyone listening to this who's from England and knows anything about the town of High Wycombe, which is really where culture and life goes to die.
I don't think it ever goes there. It goes past it.
It rolls down.
Yeah.
As
on its way to die.
On its way
it
to
ignores High
Wycombe. No, on its way to die, bits of it like flake off, like gangrenous and leprous bits of it flake off and roll down the hill.
That's more art and culture.
Roll
Even
down the
flaked,
hill.
Decayed pieces of art is more art than you'd
But
actually
anyway,
find in High Wycombe.
One afternoon in High Wycombe, of all godforsaken hellholes, Jim had me go to every single thrift store / charity shop, depending on what you want to call it, in
you were ready to kill me.
Being a really shitty little town, it had more than its fair share of charity shops. And when he first went, oh yeah, let's go video shopping, like around charity shops, I was like,
it sounded fun.
Yeah, and then I realised he was only looking for mad French films.
No, it could have been any.
No, I'm telling you, I remember distinctly.
It could have been any movie, but it had to be French.
Yeah.
It had to be French.
Which shows what kind of pretentious waffle we were dealing with.
To be fair, in my defence...
Oh, right, now here comes the defence, ladies and gentlemen.
In my defence...
Roll up your sleeves for this one.
In my defence, I was working for Playboy, and I was living in an apartment where I was eaten alive by fleas, because it was that apartment in Wandsworth. I wasn't living with Benj. I was living with my mum in an apartment full of fleas. Nice. I only had one bed, so I was sleeping on like a pull-out sofa.
Yeah, it was really at your lowest point.
With my mum being eaten alive by fleas.
Yeah.
Is it any wonder I didn't want anyone to speak to me in my own language?
Right. You just wanted to be taken away to Parisian garrets where people leant on balconies,
where everything was magical,
Galois.
Yeah,
and even if they had no money, they seemingly always were able to afford fresh
In fact,
croissant
now that I think
and
about it-
lashings of jam or whatever.
Now that I
you
think
call
about it, the reason is that French films are where smoking and being miserable are cool.
Yeah.
And at the time, I was smoking and being miserable, and I
Yeah.
really, really wanted that to be cool.
Yeah, sadly it wasn't.
It was not. No.
No.
I don't know what I'm going to have on my burger. I think I'm going to have a burger. I think it's my plan.
You gonna have a burger?
Well, the burger's like the thing that's going to,
They only
Least
serve
cause my
organic
credit card to
eggs
catch
as
fire.
opposed to fake eggs. As opposed to what's the opposite of organic?
faux eggs,
No. Like when something is synthesized.
synthetic.
Synthetic.
Eggs. Well, you do
So
get
as
like
opposed to
not
synthetic
rubber
eggs.
eggs.
You don't get rubber eggs.
Powdered
you get
eggs.
powdered eggs.
Powdered eggs.
Yes, if you're post-war rationing and you need to. But like,
Well, I guess when
apart from that, all things that come out of hens' vaginas are organic.
yeah,
Whether that hen has been fed chemicals or not.
I'm trying to think.
Because of course they do keep hens hopped up on
they do.
Vicodin or whatever they do.
Oh, you get your 2 eggs any style here.
That's what I'm doing. 2 eggs, any style, with fried ham and fries.
Okay,
It
then
says all eggs and omelets served with potatoes and toast. I just want fries.
Ooh, panini style cheese melt.
Oh, he's found something that's weird on the menu.
No, it's cheap.
Oh,
Not
it's
weird.
All right.
Cheap.
Cheap. All right.
Pastrami.
2 eggs, over easy. Ham, chips.
Panini style cheese melt. It's going to be rank though, isn't it? Like, why save $3?
I'm going to sit over here because you're big
Because
old...
my big
Well,
it's
your
snowing.
big clown shoes
It's
are in
been
the way.
snowing. There's lots of snow.
So yeah.
Anyway, we're talking about how pretentious I am. If you want, you can just.
No, it's fine. No.
we can talk
We
about
were
that for a
actually
while.
talking about the fact that
And
you've
my
never
point
seen
is
Sunset
that,
Boulevard.
yeah, I've seen Casablanca and The Big Sleep and
Strangers
I don't
on a
know,
Train.
Like, yeah, Strangers on a Train.
Rear Window,
Rear
Maltese
Window,
Falcon.
Vertigo. I've seen lots
Vertigo.
and
You've
lots
seen
and
all the
lots.
old ones,
Build My Gallows High.
right? You've seen a lot of the Chaplin and Keaton. And
Actually, I haven't seen that much Chaplin.
Oh,
or
no,
that
no,
much Keaton. I've seen one Keaton film.
your mum was a big Laurel and Hardy
Laurel and
fan.
Hardy. Lots of Laurel and Hardy.
And,
lots of
Marx Brothers, right?
Yeah, Marx Brothers.
So you've
Lots of
seen
Laurel and Hardy. I've
you've
seen lots of
seen
stuff.
the golden age of
I've
Hollywood.
seen my fair share.
Your fair share.
But I've never seen Gone with the Wind.
Never seen. Well, you don't really need to see Gone with the Wind.
No, but I'm just
it's
saying.
very long, and at the end, it all just blows away.
Oh,
Yeah.
shame.
Well, the clues in the title,
South.
really.
The South.
The South
Is that
just
what
blows away. Yeah. And anyway, frankly, my dear, I don't give a damn.
That is very clever.
Very good, sir. Very good. How are you?
Good. Any drink?
Yes. Can I have an English breakfast tea
Breakfast tea?
I'm
with
good
milk?
with water.
Okay.
Thank you
Are
very
you ready to order anytime?
much. I think I'm ready to order. Yeah.
Great. I will have 2 eggs over easy with ham, griddle ham, fried ham, whatever you do, and French fries.
Okay. Like bread? White whole multigrain fry?
Yes, I would like rye, please. Can I get that on the cider, the toast on the side, and just ham, egg, and fries on the...
Can I get the panini cheese melt thingamajig?
What kind of bread you like? White whole multigrain fry?
Multigrain.
Multigrain?
With prosciutto and portobello mushroom.
Okay. Cheese?
What's my choices on the cheese? Cheddar?
American cheddar, mozzarella?
Cheddar.
Lovely. Cheddar with prosciutto, you're not going to go mozzarella. Wouldn't that go better with the ham?
Yes, he's right. I'll get mozzarella.
Mozzarella?
Yeah.
Italian ham, Italian
Thank you.
cheese.
Yeah, you're right. I'm sorry.
Otherwise, that's weird.
Sorry. Apologise to the chef for that. Okay.
He put.
The point is, I'm not a cultural philistine. It doesn't have to have Vin Diesel in
I'm
it for me to
I'm
enjoy
not
it.
a cultural philistine, but I was just about to have
spiritual. I'm a
American
spiritual
cheddar,
philistine, yeah.
which essentially
No.
is bits of wax painted orange
I know, when they say cheddar, I get excited.
on top
I
of
think it's like the
prosciutto and
cheese I'm gonna
portobello.
like.
No, it's mozzarella. Go with the
I'm just having
cheese that has
toasted
a
I'm
name.
having a toasted sandwich, aren't I?
Yeah,
That's all I want. It's fine.
mozzarella's good.
Yeah, no, I know, but it's not very big. So normally I have something bigger, but actually that's nice. It's perfect. I'd say like a whole tub of popcorn. Free popcorn.
Yeah,
Free popcorn.
you'll be fine.
I know, I'll be fine. Yeah.
So anyway,
So
and if you want to get a side
I've
of
seen
fries or
most Billy Wilder stuff. I've seen Some Like It Hot. I've seen Some Like It Hot. I've seen The Apartment.
right? Yeah, you're fine, mate. I wasn't trying to
Sabrina.
say it. I was just saying
Sabrina Fair.
it was nice that you hadn't seen it, because normally we like to do movies neither of us have seen.
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
This one I've seen back in my day when I was consuming much of the considered greats, such as your Citizen Kaneage,
Yes.
and your Casablancans,
The
and
Third Man's.
your third all Mandals, or whatever. I was watching a lot of those. The Third Man, which I've also seen on the big screen.
I've seen the Third Man. I've seen the Third Man on the big screen.
Where did I see the Third Man
Casablanca,
on the
I
big
don't
screen?
know. I'm not sure. I've definitely seen the big screen. I've seen Casablanca on the big screen, but I think those are the only two.
No, but it was in.
Oh no! I tell you where we might have seen it. We might have seen it. Remember
Did we see it together?
the cousin used to do amazing double bills.
No. This was definitely in the States. This is in the last like 5 or 10 years.
Well, I saw To Have and Have Not. I saw To Have and Have Not and Key Largo on a double bill at the cousin.
Right.
See, what happened? Like that when they did like double bills and stuff. It used to at the cousin and whatnot. It used to be like stuff like that.
Yeah.
But I don't think I've seen. This is the first like classic on the big screen
Right.
that I've seen even advertised.
Film Forum does them.
Oh, okay.
Film Forum is your
Which
big
is the one with the really uncomfortable seats.
Metrograph.
Okay. What's the seats like at the Film Forum?
Between the ones we had tonight and the Metrograph, like somewhere in between, like not as comfortable as these, but not as
Because those are only
horrible.
like they're just
But
comfortable
the
enough.
Film Forum is being renovated.
I'm so old.
The Film Forum is being renovated.
Oh, is it?
But your Film Forum, if you want to see your film noirs, your 40s, your 50s,
I do because there's a whole load I haven't seen. I'm sure there's like
Film Forum does
Bogarts
series
and
of them.
Mitchums and stuff that I haven't seen.
Yeah. There's a whole slew of them out there. And what I like what this one to me, along with two other films, and weirdly enough, the other two are both Hitchcock films. But they have. So there's a thing. I'm going to back up a little slightly.
Back up all you like, mate.
There's a thing that Monty Python always talk about when it comes to their movies. The two main ones, Holy Grail and Life of Brian. And that is, whenever people used to make biblical epics or Arthurian epics or any kind of like
Your Cecile B. DeMille.
your Cecil B. DeMille pictures, people talk in this very, and Eddie Izzard does that bit about how do they know that the Romans talk in this very like deep voice like Peter Ustinov or James Mason. How do we not know they're like, hello, we're the Romans? And Palin always says about like the Python movies, he always says human beings have been human beings forever, whether they're speaking like oldie English or modern English or whatever, like they have the same worries, the same concerns, the same whatever. So there's something about, like, I feel like a lot of people go into
Right, thank you very much. Cheers.
Thanks. Go or stay away from older Hollywood movies or black and white movies or early movies, whatever it is, because they have some feeling that it's going to be out of time. Like it's going to be something they can't get to grips with. It's going to be something that's unusual. It's going to be something that's, because a lot of those, like even Casablanca and stuff like that, like it has a patter to it. It's not like naturalized. And it's not particularly contemporary because they're like war movies or they're, historical dramas or whatever it is. This one, the portrayal of Bruno in Strangers on a Train and the Grace Kelly character in Rear Window, I always feel to be contemporary stories. Meaning that you could watch, yes, Sunset Boulevard is incredibly well written in that like prime late 40s, early 50s Hollywood way of, lines like where he's talking about the Rudy, the shoe shine guy, and he's like, Rudy doesn't need to know about your finances, he just takes a look at your heels or whatever. Like lines like that where you're just like, oh, give me more of those lines. They're amazing. And throughout the movie there's tons of those. But the situations he finds himself in and the like thriller aspect to it, the stakes and the idea.
Yeah, because the stakes in like Casablanca are, it's about war and like who's going to beat the Nazis, and I know that it's a human drama and whatnot, but I take your point that the stakes involved are relatable.
But also I feel like the the trappings of fame, the people who are over the hill, the trappings of money, all the stuff that he gets tied up in, like all that could be made today. Like this movie, I mean, it would never be written as well, but this movie could be made by like a Fincher or someone today, and be equally as relevant.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? You grab a over-the-hill star from the late 70s, early 80s, you set it today, so they've been rotting away in this big mansion for 30 years or whatever it is. You know, this to me, like Robert Altman's The Player, like it feels like part of that history of crime stories in LA, like
you
the
get,
Hollywood
like,
Hills.
Well, you could probably, I don't know, is Lauren Bacall still alive?
No, dude, no. She was in movies as we were growing up, but no, she's not been around for a while.
Okay. No, I guess she wouldn't be, would she?
You could do it with a Jane Fonda or someone, or a Lily Tomlin. I'm only thinking of them because they do that Gracie and Frankie show, but like they seem very.
Yeah, I just think like, so I guess
you could do a gender
70s.
swap, although then that would make the whole older man, younger woman thing not easy. So stick with the older woman thing, I guess. But
I'm sorry, but I'm taking you away from your point, which is a good one.
Yeah, just that there are certain. If people out there, and I don't know in terms of the age groups and the likes and dislikes of the people who listen to the show, but if there's people out there who's like, oh, I don't necessarily want to go back and watch any like old black and white movies or old movies or whatever it is, because, you know, you're born at a certain time and I'm used to watching this stuff and I like contemporary ideas.
Well, let me ask you a question. Right?
I'm just saying that what I'm always excited by when I go back to older movies is how all the same shit still applies. Now, okay, there isn't the swearing, there isn't the sex, there isn't the gratuity that you get with more contemporary movies, but in terms of the emotions and the storytelling and all the rest of it, like, a lot of them feature stuff that's very modern, I feel. And it's commenting about the same stuff that we're still talking about now.
Yeah, that's why, and I wonder whether one of the reasons that we found it more relatable, right, is that growing up, you know, on TV, growing up on TV, black and white films were on all the time.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? Like, it was like, there was a big deal that The Third Man was on, or Casablanca was on, or whatever. Like, they were just on TV and they were around. So the notion of being entertained by like a black and white film was not like, you know, I know.
Well, it's not only that,
because it was just like they were just around.
What's hilarious is when we used to have just the 4 channels, there still wasn't enough like TV being made or TV being imported to kind of take up all that time. So I remember like sitting in sick bay at Amesbury when I was sick and being in the nurses' quarters, and they have like the little wheel-in TVs that were about, you know, 8 inches across or whatever they were, like 10 inches across, these little black and white TVs. And maybe not movies or whatever, although there were certainly movies like Bringing Up Baby and other movies like that and black and white films, but like the Phil Silvers Show and like old I Love Lucy, Laurel and Hardy, like a lot of the old.
That's what we watch, or stuff like that. Yeah,
and it was on at like 3 p.m. because ITV was like, well, we could spend, you know, 25,000 making a room making a TV show in a shed.
Now they stick
we could put movies on.
They stick on Cheers or whatever the big sitcoms were like when we were that age.
Right.
That's the thing they're like filling up the schedule. But they're in colour and they've got like silly 70s hair and whatnot.
Well, you realise stupid things like when we were growing up, the 50s were only 30 years away.
Yeah.
And now we're in the 2018s, the teens, and the 80s are now 30 years away.
Yeah, you're right, yeah.
So, like I say, my whole idea of, I don't know, taking someone who was big in the 80s, like an Ione Skye or someone who was like big in the 80s but has done nothing since.
I know what you're saying.
I'm just saying, it's not the time difference. While we feel the 80s are very contemporary, they're actually as historical as the 50s were.
You're right. No, I take your point. Although
up.
I guess what's the most interesting thing about this particular, and why I think it's interesting, like this particular time period, is because there were these huge stars. There's never been a time, I think, when there was just a mass clear out of stars, where all of a sudden, like overnight, everybody that was a movie star was irrelevant. Like, just like that. As soon as Talking Pictures came in,
unless you were a Chaplin or someone.
You could like people the clowning was still, but the idea of like being relatable to the audience, where they would have to hear you speak,
Right.
And they either
No,
had
but he
silly
did
voices,
stuff like The
or
Great
they could-
Dictator and stuff that he was able
Sure.
to like find a niche to like continue
Yeah.
on. But there
Yeah.
weren't many who did, to take your point.
But it's an interesting time, and also clearly, like you were saying, like they used to pay them £18,000 a week tax free, like this time of huge amounts of money, like the fact that she can just. I mean, I was thinking about that today. In fact, what we were talking about before about how like Python needed to raise Monty Python needed to raise some money.
Yeah.
You know, and here's this woman who hasn't been in pictures for 20 years, who always has caviar and champagne, and clearly just pisses money away. You know, living in this massive house, and she must have been in pictures for. They said they found that she's like 50, right? She hasn't done anything for 20 years, so maybe she kept going until she was 30. She was in pictures for like 10 years.
Yeah.
10 or 12 years.
No, he discovered her when she was 16, 17.
Yeah, so say 25 years.
Yeah. But she bought real estate, she has
Yeah,
oil,
that's true, I
like
guess.
there's some other
But
stuff.
but again, it's that idea of
But it's the sort of
this
wealth
kind
we
of
can't
person.
imagine.
And that kind of fame we can't imagine.
Right.
Either, because again, presumably, even though, like, I'm not sure, because for us, like Bogart and Bacall and people like that, like they're the big stars, but I can't imagine, because I don't. We're not even. We knew, like, our parents were
Well, it's supposed to be-
contemporary
I
of
mean,
the idea
stuff
of
like-
Bogart and Bacall being stars. What I'm saying is, imagine how big. If pictures got big in the 20s, right, and everybody went and it was a huge deal, then these people like Valentino and Garbo and whatnot would have been like stars, like the first movie stars.
Yeah.
Like arguably maybe like the first stars, because the whole
Well,
point
the-
about a
the-
star is you don't have to go to a place to see them. Like they come to you, so they're known
Right.
by millions and millions and millions of people.
Great. Well, the best way to put it is...
And no
sort
one
of-
has any experience of that. Like,
No.
whatever she went through,
Right.
as an actress at that age, nobody
Right.
had ever been through that.
Right.
Or anything even
I mean,
very
unless you
close
were
to it.
in London or Paris or New York and were around the theatres, but never to that extent. You weren't being beamed
her
into
point is
every...
people from like little towns that she presumably came from, like come
Yeah,
to,
yeah,
and they're like, oh, we saw you on that. You know what I mean? It's not. It's like.
Well, it was... What was fascinating about that time in Hollywood, and I can't profess to know much about it...
Okay. Great. Thank you very much.
Oh, wow, look at that.
Great chefs.
Thank you, sir.
Right, those. Oops.
Thank you. Ketchup, great. Thank you. I can't profess to know lots about it, but it's sort of like the gold rush. It's sort of that thing where there aren't a lot of taxes, like you say. Money's flowing. Every picture is a hit because everyone is looking for pictures. So,
Right.
and there's no requirement for like, you're not paying a huge crew, you're not paying a huge writer base, there's not producers, there's not, like, there's one lighting guy, there's not even sound guys. Like, that you could make them just dress someone up nice, you know, come up with a basic thing.
It's sort of like you can have big stars, right? But like nobody's going to be like Elvis or the Beatles again. Like it's just not going to happen.
Right.
You
Well,
know?
this is what's really interesting right now, and we're seeing it again with the digital thing and streaming and cord cutting and everything, is that everything is getting smaller and smaller and smaller and smaller. So I was listening to John Cleese's biography, right? So he's talking about the start of Python. And Python went out, even at like 10 o'clock at night, there was like 13 million people watching, because you have around, back then, probably around 45 million people in the UK at the time. Only about 13 to 20 million of them have TV sets, if that. But everyone who had a TV set were all watching. Like, it wasn't like you went, well, I'll do something else. Because there wasn't, like, once the TV came in,
Right.
everyone was around the TV, you know what I mean? Like, the Frost Reports used to get 8, 9, 10, 11 million. Like, David Frost was as big as anybody has ever been from the UK at the time that he was becoming, like, David Frost. He had shows on both continents. He was interviewing everyone. Like, everyone knows, like, Frost Nixon, but, like, there was a period of time where he was, like, one of Britain's biggest exports. And for us, growing up in the 80s with fat old David Frost doing, like, Frost on
Through the
keyhole or whatever, we're like, what? But
Yeah.
so anyway, I mean, yeah, you could definitely spiral off and talk about the nature of fame, but why don't you, sir, as you saw this for the first time. For people who don't know, and people should really know about the plot of Sunset Boulevard, but give us the 10-minute, 5-minute plot of Sunset
Fair enough.
Boulevard.
Yeah, I mean, I knew the basic idea, which is, well, basically, struggling writer, down on his luck. But what was interesting to me about it, he's in no way an honourable man. Like, he's a struggling writer, but he's attempting to break out of this struggle by writing crap.
Yeah.
Which, I mean, I found a lot of it quite relatable. In that when I stopped writing, I wasn't writing like great, powerful truth that people weren't, ready to hear.
Right.
I was writing crap that I hoped would sell. Do you know what I mean?
You weren't writing crap. I liked your script.
Yeah, but I'm just talking about like the few things I did before I stopped. I was just writing crap that I hoped would sell. Anyway, the point is, he's not an honourable guy.
Right.
He's like desperate and down on his luck, and his car's about to get repossessed, and he's got no money.
Hasn't
he's not
paid his rent in 3 months.
And I don't know whether you would necessarily. I'd be interested to know whether how you see him, because I feel like I'm going to see his character totally different, having watched the whole film now. If I ever see the movie again, but at the beginning, he's not very likable. He's not a very likable guy. He's not very.
He's likable because he has those like ready quips, but. No, he's not. Nothing he does is honourable or likable.
Right, but he's very difficult to relate to. But what's interesting is, so then he goes into this by accident. He ends up in the house of an aging Hollywood star who's quite mad, obsessed with herself. Her pictures, her own portrait is everywhere in this crumbling super mansion.
Yeah.
And she asks him, she shows him her script, and he lies and says it's good but just needs a little bit of work. He thinks, I can make an easy few hundred here fleecing this mad old biddy, right?
Right. He needs 300 to get his car out of hot.
Right.
And a bit more to cover his apartment.
So, but the point is, at that moment, he becomes, what's odd is, even though he's quite, up to that point, been quite unlikable and not very admirable, and as we know from the beginning of the picture, destined for a bad end.
Right.
And yet, as soon as he steps into that house, he becomes the audience surrogate. He becomes the guy we're seeing this whole thing through.
Right.
And it's a story, basically, then, of their relationship. And it's a relationship of two people who are unable to face the brutal truths of their own lives, which is that she's over the hill. Well, basically, that neither of them have any hope in Hollywood.
Right.
Him because he's got no heart.
Right.
And her because she's past it. Right. Both of them to an extent are past it, actually, I think about it. But anyway, what happens is,
and he's full of posturing about trying to be an honourable man, but really,
because I think
he
what
becomes
happens
very
is,
comfortable.
Well, what's odd about it is, I don't think he does. I just think
not comfortable. I mean,
he's trapped. He becomes trapped because the first time
I meant comfortable in the sense that he doesn't seem 100% willing to give everything up that she's given him.
No, and what's interesting is what's keeping him there is less. It's because there's nothing out there for him. It's very similar to her. There's nothing out there for him except humiliation. If he goes back home with his tail between his legs, having failed to make it as a writer, he's going to be humiliated because he'll be reminded that he's nothing, that he's nobody, that he's not important, which is everything that she fears, about what's really waiting for her outside in the real world. So they're both really, really similar, and yet neither of them. It can't. Well, first of all, we know it can't last because we know what happens at the end of the movie. So the significant chunk of the movie is him basically coming to realise that they're both miserable. And they're both miserable because they're lying to themselves. But, as is so often the way with people who are older than you are, she is beyond any kind of... there's a point near the end when he's leaving, he tries to say to her, look, just be 50. What was so interesting about the movie for me, right, is that nobody really... these characters don't have a neat pat narrative journey where they're like mean to start with, and then they learn lessons, and then they grow, or even just like complicated, and what they learn is, oh, life is so complicated. She learns nothing. She doesn't change, and all that happens with him is he doesn't realise that you either choose to worship her, like the director,
Right.
or leave, right, or rather don't get involved. But as soon as you walk through the door, you either worship her or kill her. Those are the choices. Now that I think about it, that's what it is. As soon as you walk through the door, you either worship her or you kill her. And he can't leave initially. Like that first time he tries to leave, she like slashes her wrists. There's an amazing shot, and I don't know if it's deliberate, although it felt deliberate. And one of the reasons I'm really glad we watched this on the big screen. You've ever seen it on the big screen before?
No, never.
So
I had an old VHS of it at college. That was probably the last time I watched it.
you know, when she's lying on her bed,
Yeah.
and she's got her her wrists are bound, and her arm, she's covering her eyes. She can't look at him.
Yeah.
Right.
She's crying.
The way it's filmed, he's sat like here, and there's a bit where he stands up, and I swore in the cinema somebody stood up in the cinema. Like the way it was filmed, I thought, oh, I can't believe somebody's getting up at this point. So I thought, it's so dramatic, it's a great shot, and somebody's standing up, and it was him, it was Holden,
Right.
standing up in the movie, and I thought that's kind of got to be deliberate, surely, because he stands up, basically out of the audience, what looks like the way it's framed, and then walks towards her on the bed.
Right.
Takes her arms out over her eyes and like says Happy New Year, like, okay, so either I guess I have to worship you or I'm going to kill you. But he literally, well, not literally, it felt like he stood up out of the audience and walked up to her to worship her, which is all
Right.
she wants.
Yeah. No, it's like the only, I suppose the only good, quote unquote, good person in it is Betty, the reader / writer. But even she becomes
She's
enamored with
complicated.
another guy while her husband's off, or her future husband is off making a movie in Arizona.
And even she says, I don't want to be a reader anymore, I want to be a, and there's I come from a Hollywood family. She got her nose fixed to try and be an actress, but she rejected.
Right.
So she's young,
Yeah.
and she's spunky, so she
Yeah.
bounced back from that, and now she wants to be a writer. She's going to work her way up. But the unspoken thing here is that's just as much of a delusion as anybody else is suffering.
Yeah.
She's wanting to throw her fiance away on Holden. Just old, withered, artistically withered.
No, but there is a feeling that both of them find some life in, he's sneaking out every night to go to the studio again.
But he even says,
Right.
he even says, I felt like a kid again, like sneaking out to see gangster pictures. Like
Right.
that's an illusion too. Like,
Oh, it's all an illusion, but,
no,
that's,
but he's reliving the times when
he's finding life again.
when he loved writing and there was hope. But he knows that's an illusion as well. That's why he doesn't. He knows, even if they finish the picture, even if she doesn't find out, and he knows she will. There's no way he can steal the car every night.
Right. Well, the big thing is him literally and everyone else metaphorically, but they're all doomed. Yeah. Like that's the whole thing about it. Yes, there's illusion. Yes, there's commentary on once you're of a certain age, as a woman in Hollywood. There's also commentary on like that period in Hollywood, like we said, the talkies coming along and a whole generation of stars, unless they were willing to like step up and sort of change things, were cast aside. Directors like Cecile B. DeMille got to carry on and in fact got bigger palettes and more exciting stuff to work with, whereas these other people got like cast to the side.
Yeah, I mean, that's the interesting thing about him is right at the beginning he says, what I'm writing was either too original or it wasn't original enough.
Yeah.
And she criticises him at the beginning for writing like generic plots that have no heart. But you sort of get the feeling that then he makes allusion to, he wrote something about the Okies and the Dust Bowl. They got turned into a torpedo picture. So what's he supposed to learn from? Well, I wrote a script that I poured my heart out into.
Yeah.
And they took it away and they turned it into like a cheesy, like, U-boat picture.
Right.
So, and I haven't had any work since then, so I guess I better try and write cheesy U-boat pictures. Like, why not just go straight there? Like, what's he supposed to learn from that?
Right.
And yet he's like pilloried and ignored because he's trying to write what they want.
Yeah, and in terms of like the whole good and bad thing, that is far more a classification that we give to more traditional plots. I don't feel like anybody in this picture is like truly bad. They're all a victim of their own choices, sure, but also partly circumstance, and a victim of the city that they all live in, and a victim of the industry that they're all trying to be.
Well, it certainly seems that the one that what's interesting, I think, to me, is that the person that Billy Wilder has the most sympathy for, because it's probably worth pointing out that like, Billy Wilder was a major Hollywood director of his time, right?
Yeah.
Like, huge. And he was like, I mean, he turned his hand to anything. I mean, he did freaking Double Indemnity and Some Like It Hot. Like, one of the best film noir pictures ever made.
Yeah.
And one of the funniest comedies ever made, right? Yeah. The guy that discovered freaking Marilyn Monroe. Well, kind of. I mean, the point being, this is a guy, he could make anything. He could make comedies, he could make dramas, he could make film noirs and anything. And they were all like hits. And the person he's got the most sympathy for in the movie is the actress.
Yeah.
Even though he's a writer, like he wrote his movies.
Yeah.
But and what's weird is she is like she's vain, she's selfish, she's cruel. She's all the things you imagine like a certain kind of actress would be. Like her firing the gun.
Manipulative.
Right, her firing the gun at the end is you sort of get the feeling she doesn't really know what she's doing. She's
She's just a melodramatic nutcase.
Right. But he has sympathy for her, not because of who she is, right? But because once upon a time she was like Betty Schaefer.
Right.
And then the world fell in love with her. And, you know, by falling in love with her, they destroyed her.
Yeah.
The world ate her alive. And he has sympathy for her, not because of, again, it's weird to watch it.
But you
because
see
of the way modern movies work, right? What I'm saying is, it's weird because she doesn't have any nothing about her personality or her soul is sympathetic,
right,
in any way. You know, she's cruel and keeping up self-delusion for no reason other than it's the easiest thing to do. And yeah, sympathy for her because not of who she is, but because of what was done to her, because of who she became.
Right.
Everything is she is because of what was done to her.
Look at reality TV stars. Look at pop stars who make it young.
Right.
Like, at the moment, not that reality TV has gone anywhere, but the big TV of the last, whatever it is, like the big TV of like 10, 15 years ago was definitely reality and game shows and whatever. And, you know, the Simon Cowell years or whatever. And look, that's still very much alive. American Idol, Bachelor.
Although most of them are shutting down.
These things still get huge, whatever.
Yeah.
But then all of a sudden you start getting your Breaking Bads and your Walking Deads, and like suddenly scripted, produced, directed TV is not only back, but it's like all over the place. And Netflix starts investing in it, and Amazon starts investing in it, and there's hit after hit, but there's also like little weird things you can discover on Netflix. Like I scroll through Netflix and I'm like, there's like 15 TV shows on here that Netflix have produced that I'm not even, like, where did they all come from? When did they even, like, they don't market them, they don't advertise them, they're just there for you to find and discover in their little rom-coms or their little dramas or their sci-fi things.
I could genuinely live on Netflix with nothing else, and I would be entertained.
Right.
However it is I want to be entertained.
And what's interesting about that is that there would be a story to tell, or there is a way to look at it. Not that I would have as much sympathy, but your Kardashians of the world, your Paris Hiltons of the world.
Agree.
A really great example would be someone like Britney Spears, who did have like that public, like mad meltdown thing. And now she's off in Vegas. I think she's doing a lot better. But I just mean there. And I remember at the time, Craig Ferguson did a whole bit at the beginning of his show where he was like, what are we all doing? Like, everyone's making jokes about her. Everyone's posting a picture and, attacking her and da-da-da-da. Like, she's clearly got some kind of, like, mental issue, mental illness. And this is how we treat her, like, throw her to the wolves kind of thing. So, like, this story, in terms of her Norma Desmond's expectation of Hollywood, and Norma Desmond's expectation of fame, and Norma Desmond desperately trying to extend her life into something that she was used to when she was very, very young. I mean, you know, like he said, I discovered her when she was 16, 17. You know, she got fame very young, whatever it is. That hasn't gone away. That story is still with us.
It's true, but again, what's
in
interesting...
in different forms.
No, I agree, although I think what's interesting is...
And maybe not to the same extent, not to the same wealth.
The time is interesting because, like these days, I think it feels it's easier for stars or whatever to hold on to some element of glamour. You know what I mean? Some idea of it.
Because I think nowadays you can get your perfume line, you can get your clothing
but that's
line.
what I'm saying.
Like diversify
that's what I'm saying.
a bit.
For her, she woke up one morning, and that life was over. And it's an exaggerated thing. I'm sure that a lot of female actresses in Hollywood go through the thing where they're like, no one wants to take your calls anymore. Like, that must be a thing where they hit 35 or 40 and no one wants to know anymore. Right?
I mean, unless you do.
But that's what TV's around for.
But that's
now.
why
that's what Netflix is like.
Not only that, but that's why you see more and more actresses, your Sandra Bullock, your Reese Witherspoons, becoming producers and developing their own films, because they're like, we know we still have an audience, we know we still have our ability, we still. Let's do our own stuff. Like, if Hollywood doesn't want us, there's enough avenues now where my name above the picture will get this thing made. That's true. And so, but you needed. Let's not forget, you've had people like the Helen Mirrens, the Susan Sarandons, even the Jane Fondas and the Lily Tomlins of the world, who have, to some extent, for older women and in that period, sort of blazed a little bit of a trail. I mean, not to the same extent that men have it, and there's still a horrible, horrible gap, but there are people who have tried time and time again to have that longevity as a female.
I agree. I mean, one other interesting thing about her as a character, I thought all the way through, is that she looks a lot, and I can't help feeling it's deliberate, but she looks like a monster for most of the film.
The way he likes it.
She doesn't look like, there's no like light her in a way that's like, oh, look at, do you see the beauty she used to be? And,
right.
Like, he doesn't even give her that. Like, there's no like vanity where like she gets to feel beautiful.
But
like,
do you see where the whole
even at the end, she looks like the Bride of Frankenstein.
Yeah.
Like the way her hair is and the way she's lit, she looks exactly like the Bride of Frankenstein.
In Brazil, Sam Larry's mother is constantly having like plastic surgery and da-da-da-da. The shot at the end where they come up and find her, the newspaper woman is dictating on the phone. And she's saying Norma Desmond surrounded by policemen and da-da-da-da, alone in her room looking into a mirror. And it comes round and there's like those big lights and there's a mirror and she's like... That, like, Gilliam got all that from that. Like, all of... If you think of the setup when Jim Broadbent is pulling her face back and stuff, I know everyone's like, oh, you can't talk about Gilliam anymore because he said something stupid in an interview. And he did. He said something really, really, really fucking ignorant and stupid in an interview. But that doesn't take away from the fact that Brazil's an amazing... I mean, I can't... Whatever.
I don't think... If I just to... Because, I think it fits in neatly here. I think Gilliam was damaged by Hollywood.
Yep.
I think he wanted to make great films, and he's too weird and idiosyncratic, and they didn't like him. And I think he tried to change himself, and I just think he tried to fit in. No, when he was like 40 or 50, he tried to change himself and like tried to invent himself as a harmless, lovable, sprite with, whimsical flights of imagination. And everything since Fear and Loathing has been, garbage. Everything he's made since then has not been good. And I heard that he did like a Desert Island Discs thing, and he was just an arse. He was just this like, oh, I'm so lovable. I'm such a sprite. I'm such a whimsical sprite. Fuck off. I didn't. I don't like your stuff because it's like whimsical. I like your stuff because it's odd and dark. It comes from this weird place of visual imagination. I think he got destroyed by Hollywood, and I think he's found himself in a position of.
He's an angry old white guy.
No, but I think it's more than that with him. I genuinely think he feels like every producer who ever did him a favour in Hollywood, he owes everything to him. And I think he feels like, if I step out of line, I'm going to get crushed. If I say the wrong thing, I'm going to get... Because all through his life, he said,
He's not working with Hollywood. He hasn't worked with Hollywood.
I know, but he wants to badly. He doesn't... He's coming out and saying what he thinks, the old white men who still run Hollywood want to hear, which of course they do, but, not the people that are actually going to pay to see the films, which is all fat white guys that run Hollywood actually care about. I'm just saying, I think what he said was troubling and weird and opens up a few questions about his own personality and how he sees actors and actresses. Right? But I think he was ruined by Hollywood, and just like she was. I think I think some people are savvy enough to stay sane. I mean, plenty of actors have gone mad. Just mad. James Woods is mad. Yeah. He's a mad person. And he used to be, strange, but cool and intense. And, he was his guest cameo on The Simpsons is still one of the funniest cameos ever. He was a funny, interesting guy. Now he's just gone mad. And they do, if you treat people like that, they go odd. They turn strange.
But it's also the equivalent of, Hollywood is an industry town. So it's like if you spent 20 years down a mine, and all you knew was 20 years down a mine or 30 years down a mine.
Well, yeah, that's true.
And whatever,
yeah.
And that's all you knew.
Yeah, there was definitely an element.
I don't know, you walked into, some mad S&M nightclub in the middle of New York or whatever, and saw the debauchery and madness that was going on around you, having spent 30 years in a mining town, knowing nothing but corned beef sandwiches or whatever. That would, that's what's going on in the outside world. What the hell? Whatever it is. I don't know.
No, I agree. I mean, I think that's another part of what she has to go through as well, is that, she was told she was the greatest thing. She was the best at something. And then, not even halfway through her life, she gets told, well, you can't do that anymore.
Yeah.
But you've got lots of money and a big house, so just sitting there. And of course, it's difficult to feel sorry for anybody because we can all. But it must be hard to be the best at something, particularly if it's natural. It's not something you have to work at. It's just they stuck in front of a camera and they turned it on. They were like, this person's got it, and then obviously you don't have it anymore, and that must be. It must be weird
it's also
to know
really
that
weird.
You can't do anything ever again.
The Cecile B. DeMille scene is really interesting when she goes back to the studio. So there's a point in the movie where she has sent off this long rambling script, which he's tried to edit down into something, but at the same time she's not really let him.
Yeah.
He keeps taking stuff out, and she's like, put that back in. That's a really pivotal scene because I'm in it. Not
Why would anybody not want to look at me? Yeah.
Not want to look at me, right? So she sends it off to the studio because Cecil B. DeMille, she worked with him in the silent movies. They made 20 movies together, blah, 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 blah. And someone from the studio has been calling her this whole time because her weird German butler, who was also a film director who discovered her back in the 20s, and also her first husband, who now sort of runs her life and maintains this illusion by sending her fake fan letters and telling people to bugger off and all sorts of stuff, just maintaining this
protecting her
bubble. But is it? It's also destroying her.
Because I think you have to. That's what I mean. I think it's only two choices with her.
Oh, that he realised that you either maintain it or she dies.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
And he'd rather she would live than not.
And so the Cecile B. DeMille, she goes down the thing because she thinks someone from the studio has been calling her because they want to talk about the script, and Cecil hasn't called her himself, so she's like, fuck it, we'll go down to Paramount. And they drive into the Paramount lot, and the old gate guard who knows her very well is like, Miss Desmond can come on. Like, they still buy into her majesty to some extent. She goes onto the stage, and all the older actors and lighting guy and various other people like recognize her and genuinely like crowd her and talk to her and stuff like that. And then Cecile B. DeMille goes off and calls the guy who's been calling her and finds out that all they want to do is rent her. She has like a classic European car that's like 30 years old or whatever. They want to rent that for a picture for a few days. And that's why they've been calling her. And he can't break the news to her about that, but sort of placates her, gets her off the soundstage, and then says, stop calling her about her car. I'll buy you a car. I'll get you a car. Like, leave her alone. And it's a really interesting sequence because on one hand, he does the nice thing, right? He does the kind thing, the human thing. But on the other hand, there's a lot of like pity tied up into it, and there's a lot of pride tied up, and like he's very proud about what it is, but he's also dismayed by the way the system's treating him.
Yeah,
like,
I think
he can't quite bite the hand that feeds him.
No,
but at the same time, he feels that pit of disgust at what he has to do, because he knows full well if he goes to a producer and says, I'd like Norma Desmond to even be a fucking fifth bit part in a movie, they would be like, no, we don't work with her anymore.
No, I think there's definitely an element of it too in that sequence of like there but for the grace of God.
Right.
You know, like, well, I'm older than she is and she's on the scrappy, but
right.
like just because in front of the camera, and you're right, it's for him it's just business. Like, well, I can't use her, you know, and I can't. It's too expensive to just like it would cost too. I don't want because I think he initially it's a simple moral choice. And he realises that the easy thing to do is just to ignore her, send out a lackey, tell her to get lost. And he goes, no, I'm not going to do that. I'm going to tell her to her face. You know, we'll talk, and I'll let her know that it's not. But when he sees her, he can't. They say it's pity. He can't do it.
Right.
So again, just like the first husband, just like Holden, just like everybody, it's easier to play along. You know, it's easier just to like let her have her illusions.
Yeah.
You know, because it's less painful for everybody.
Right.
That's ultimately what it is. It's just less painful for everybody. And you know, the thing about the car, like, you know, I'll buy him a car, just stop calling her. It's like, it's not like, let's figure out a way of, you know, let's try and get her into the picture. Like, there's nothing like, it's just like, quit tormenting her. Quit pretending that this is fucking real for her.
Well,
because then that's the painful thing. Her talking to me and me talking to her, that is what's
because there's two things. There's part of you wants her to get out of her own way, realize her age, and go, well, maybe I could do like the great character role, or even a dotty grandmother in some movie, right?
Yeah, because there are old. That's the thing. There's some of the people that recognise her in the studio are
not
actors.
that 50 by the way is old, but back then in Hollywood,
sure, but there were actors who were
50.
old. And they were sitting in their acting chairs, and they were in costume, and they were waiting, and they recognised.
Look at what Betty Davis had to do, when she got older.
Right.
Like, it was like, I'll do, you know,
the nanny,
Baby Jane movie, because, like, I'm not young, pretty, spunky, intelligent Betty Davis anymore. I'm like old, weird, saggy-faced mad woman, and if I plunk on a bunch of like thick white makeup and roll around in my wheelchair, I might get my last hurrah, you know?
Well, she was in the Hammer movie, The Nanny, and she was in her 60s, I would guess. And she's amazing in that film. And not just like, she's not supposed to be like spooky or terrifying. She's supposed to be like odd and not quite right.
Right.
Very sympathetic.
And even I don't know about Gloria Swanson, but like,
I don't know about Gloria Swanson. I know nothing about Gloria Swanson.
This role definitely defines her career. It's not like there's another.
I don't know. I mean, presumably she was a silent film actress. I mean, given that Buster Keaton was in it, and Cecile B. DeMille, and Hetta, whatever her name is, I didn't recognise the other names, but I recognised Buster Keaton. He only had one line.
Right.
So weird, Buster Keaton playing bridge with her, and actual Cecile B. DeMille, actual Hetta, whatever her name is. You know, it was strange.
But it's such a good movie because
Oh, it's great. I really listen. Can I say this right? I really liked it, and it was very difficult. It was hard to watch at the beginning because he was this, selfish, ambitious writer who'd squandered his chance, basically.
right.
And it's tough when you are yourself a bit of a, selfish writer who squandered his chance to go, oh, this is the guy, is it? Okay. And especially since it starts off with, well, this is not going to end well. But it was really gothic as well. He talks about how the house reminds of Miss Havisham out of Great Expectations, and there's a lot of that. There's a lot of that, gothic, in the house, it's kind of
Even the
weird,
picture of Dorian Gray
prison.
type.
Yeah. That kind of old, almost.
She has all these pictures of herself, and there's so what I like about it so much is it's not an easy, obvious satire. It satirizes a bunch of stuff, but it's not an easy, obvious satire. It's not really a straightforward anything. It's sort of
because it sort of
very
mythologizes
unique.
Hollywood at the same time as completely stripping it away of all its
Right.
pretensions.
And it, like you say, all of the characters are ambiguous in terms of morals and wants and needs and everything else. No one's really honorable or anything like that. It's not really a crime drama. It's not really a horror, but there are aspects of both those things in it.
Melodrama, probably.
Melodrama, yeah. But it's, and also it's one of those things where you're it doesn't have to be about Hollywood. It can be about any industry, and it doesn't have to be about. Although this film is very clearly about an actress getting older and what age and femininity and so on means in Hollywood then and means in Hollywood now, sadly. Unless, like I say, you're Helen Mirren or Susan Sarandon. But you could equally look at it as just a movie about being doomed, being
it's got
aging,
it's got a very film noir structure. It's got the voiceover, it's got the final doom scene played out at the beginning, and how did I get here? It's got a classic film noir
But
structure.
no,
It's got shadows everywhere. It's got that kind of feeling of menace of people being,
but in terms of
inexplicably. Driven towards their fate by forces within themselves that they are completely incapable of controlling, and forces that are exerted on them by other people who they believe they are in some kind of relationship with, but again they have no control over them. So that is what gives it its energy.
But there's also that idea that, and you don't have to be a writer trapped in a old crumbling Hollywood mansion with a woman and a dead chimp. It's all about also how a lot of people, myself included, many times in my life, live in that case of, if I could just get this.
Yeah.
Not so much if I could just get this, then all my problems would be solved. But if I could just get this, I could leave behind X, Y, and Z in the midst of time, and to some extent grow beyond them, get past them, become a better person, whatever it is, right? And the X, Y, and Z is no big, grand, horrible thing that you did, but it's human decisions you made that at the time felt like the right decision, or at the time felt like the fun, reckless decision, or at the time felt like whatever.
Right.
But there's still a decision that traps you, right? What is that thing that every decision you make is a cage, or every idea you have is a cage, or something like that? I forget. There's something that I've read or heard that's something like that. But there's that idea of knowing you're doomed, knowing that you never fully shake free the decisions you've made, and that idea that just because you manage to keep your head above water and you manage to leap to the next stone on a river or whatever it is, sooner or later we all go over the waterfall kind of thing.
Well,
like it's just, there's a lot you can take from it that is metaphorical of just the human condition in general, without it being a big pretentious like, oh, this is a philosophical.
No, I agree with you. I
discussion
was
about
actually thinking.
human condition. I didn't explain that very well.
No. Listen, okay. First of all, I know exactly what you mean, because I think that the whole thing, that the biggest tragedy about the movie is that the brutal truths that they're facing is not just that he's over the hill and she's washed up. The brutal truths they're facing are more specific than that, which is that he knows he's over the hill and she knows she's washed up, but the fiction that they live with, that they've designed for themselves, which is that Cecil B. DeMille's going to call, and for him, I'm going to write that script and it's going to take me where I want to go. The problem is not that they're washed up. The problem is that the thing, like you're saying, that they're holding on to that is going to get them past that, that can leave that washed upness in the past and they can reinvent themselves as something new, is a lie.
And is engulfing them.
It's not that it's the worst pain they feel in the movie. It's not that they can't look at the truth. It's that they can't let go of the lie.
Right.
That's the problem. And but what's interesting about
nobody is redeemed.
No. But
nobody gets their moment.
So the film noir. So think about the film noir thing, right? About there's the voiceover and the way it begins with the end of the movie. But also, now that I think about it, there's a really interesting thing about most film noirs. Certainly, Double Indemnity is a good example.
Right.
Are man of grey moral character gets mixed up with femme fatale, usually ends up getting killed by it, right? Like that's a lot of film noirs follow that pattern, and they are in a doomed relationship, and usually it's involving crime or murder or whatever, but actually
sometimes they get the better of it. In Maltese Falcon he gets the better of it. No, that's true,
but the actual when you watch a lot of, not the big ones, but like the little kind of the film noirs that were churned out, they were a lot. Man of grey moral character meets femme fatale, doomed relationship, crime goes wrong, she usually ends up killing him, something like that, right? Or they die together, something. Right. But it's doomed, and it's usually some guy gets mixed up with a woman he shouldn't. And in a sense, that's what Sunset Boulevard is. In a sense, she is a femme fatale, in a weird way, and that's why it's sort of like a film noir, but also sort of like a melodrama. And also sort of like, I mean, there's what's weird about it is that there's kitchen sink elements to it. Like the film that she's pitching, like, something real about a teacher and how hard it is. Like, well, their little story, their little bit.
You're talking about Betty Schaefer.
Betty Schaefer, the young writer, and him. Their little bit is very like, they work in a grimy little office and they're tapping around the typewriter and they're making coffee out of, like, it's like the opposite of glamour, and it feels real, and the decisions they're making, and the she's engaged but they have this thing and they're strolling around fakes. That feels like a whole different movie.
Yeah.
That's like a little real kitchen sink drama. There's like so many things going on, and they're all revolve around Hollywood, but also they also revolve around like how real life is, even for people who work in Hollywood, even for when their life's work is making stuff up.
Yeah.
How real their own lives are, how painful, how much okay, let me put it this way, right?
In fact, the only time he actually shows any moral backbone is with her, in the sense that...
Yeah, but what I like about that is that doesn't last either.
No, it doesn't last, but it doesn't last because she then comes to him and goes, okay, I now have feelings for you. Like, she's...
Yeah, true.
She's happy with the teasing up until that point.
Yeah.
And she would have kissed him on the street when they were out on the lot. But he says, no, like, step away, keep 2 feet away from me, let's just write, like, shouldn't do it. Like, he is obviously feeling it, she's obviously feeling it, but at the same time, like, he keeps saying that his friend, who she's engaged to, there is no better guy, like, there is no nicer guy, there is no better guy. Like, he's well aware of his shortcomings and so on. But he's probably also aware that makes him a little bit sexy. You know what I mean? Like, that makes him a little bit dangerous. But it's
you guys are spitballing this out loud here.
What's
that?
You spitball on the it's like a script.
It's a movie, Sunset Boulevard. We just
is.
watched it.
We just watched it.
We're talking about a movie we just watched.
Oh. I thought you were projecting an idea for a new thing.
No.
If we
I'm
did,
overhearing this. I'm like, oh God, don't say it out loud. I want you to be in the room.
No, listen, Sunset Boulevard. If I had
if this was
written that,
1950, we'd be on to a
we
winner.
would
Yes.
be, but no, this is
bit late.
no good. But thank you for liking what we were saying.
I love what you're talking about. I just wanted to make sure it's protected.
Oh, thanks, man. Thank you very
Thanks
much.
very
Very kind.
much.
Thank you. Have a good
All
night.
the best. Have a good one.
Well, by the way, the thing I was going to say earlier was that one of the things was what are the pictures for, right? What's Hollywood for? It's to make people's horrible, grim, hopeless lives like bring a little bit of magic, a little bit of hope, right? That's what they're for. And what's cool about Sunset Boulevard is, well, the people that make that happen, like the people that manufacture this hope for the working steps, well, what have they got?
Right.
Like, where's their little bit of magic? Because like their lives are building this stuff, and they've got broken marriages or like bruised egos or like what, you know what I mean? Like it's what are the people that make the magic? What's
Well,
for
this
them,
is what,
you
and
know?
it's what always frustrates me when people are like, you know, why does so and so play music, or why does so and so, I don't know, buy a vineyard, or why does so like they condemn people in Hollywood for having like second careers, but if you talk to a lot of actors and directors, they don't want to sit and watch a movie. Like they've just spent 4 months making one. They don't want to, and then they've spent another 2 months editing one.
Right.
The last thing they want to do is go sit a movie. We all want to go sit and watch a movie because we haven't spent 6 months making one. So of course they're going to like be musicians or travel the world or everything was wonderful.
Well, get the check.
Yeah.
Take the check.
Of course they want to, I don't know, set up a vineyard or like Peter Weller, you know, study Italian art and learn different languages or whatever it is, like do a PhD and stuff. Like, of course they want to do all that because they don't have the movies.
Yeah, but that's the thing, isn't it? Like one of the
We have the movies.
again with the timing of Sunset Boulevard is one of the things that's happened over the last 80 years, right, 90 years, has been that people go through this stuff, right, and so people go through it, like they're not popular anymore, or their films don't make money, or whatever. But now, when they go through it, it's like, oh yeah, but he went and he opened a vineyard. That was a cool idea. Or he joined a band, or whatever. But they're not like on their own anymore. It's like people that went through this before them,
Right.
that they can like learn from,
Right.
you know, and how to be a little happier. But I feel like, I mean, that whole when it happens is there's still glamour in the movies. Like Cecile B. DeMille is still making films,
Right.
But I don't know. It's
Well, also it's weird
she's
because
just left. No one's got any advice. That's the thing. Like nowadays, people could like maybe help her. There's probably like a fading actresses fucking workshop or something. You know what I
Right.
mean? Like let's get together and we'll, I don't know, make dolls' houses or something. I don't know, whatever. But like then it's like she's just on her own, and like, she plays bridge with Buster Keaton, and like none of them can bring themselves to articulate the pain and the loneliness and the abandonment they feel. You know,
Yeah.
they're just alone, utterly alone, like astronauts, like an astronaut would feel. You know, like after never getting to go back to the moon again, like that kind of a unique desolation that nobody could possibly even begin to empathise with. You know, and that's where she lives.
But it's a phenomenal film.
Yeah, it
and
was. I really enjoyed
I would
it.
urge everyone listening to go seek it out.
Yeah, for sure.
It's pretty readily available. It's certainly got a like 60th anniversary DVD release. I don't know whether
like
it's
you said,
also gone out on Blu-ray.
You were telling
but-
me about like there are streaming services where you can get like all the classics, and there are, because one of the things we were talking about earlier was how you can't get black and white stuff on Netflix, but there are streaming sites where
Mubi
you can get,
sometimes does it. Filmstruck, does it. There's one other one. I know Filmstruck has all the Criterion, which is like you pay for Filmstruck and then you have to pay like an extra $2 to get like the Criterion package or whatever it is. But you're right. I think what's sadly being lost in the streaming thing, and please write in if you know of like old Hollywood streaming stuff, is that like on Amazon, for example, if you have public domain old Hollywood shit, like, I don't know, the movie they were in before they were famous, or the movie they were in when they were over the hill, but it's like an old black and white movie, you can find those pretty easily. But in general, like classic Hollywood,
Yeah, like if I wanted to watch The Big Sleep, I wouldn't know where to go.
right,
I wouldn't know where to go.
or even big stuff like Wizard of Oz, or
Yeah.
And I feel it's because the Warner Archive, and to some extent the Mill Creek Archive.
The Warner Archive might have a
I
bit,
believe
but-
they've started doing streaming now, some of them. But mostly they want you to like buy it or rent it on iTunes for $9.99 or whatever. Like you can get all these classic movies on iTunes and buy them. But
I suspect it's probably just as simple as I would be stunned if in the early incarnations of Netflix that they didn't have, because the early incarnations of Netflix they had streaming rights for all DVDs, you know, so I'm sure that would have included Big Sleep and Casablanca and all the rest of it. My guess is that people just didn't watch them. And so
Right.
they didn't feel the need to pursue them.
there's some on that. There's more on Amazon because
okay, like, for
Amazon
example, right,
is still.
I work
sells
for a
them.
TV company, right?
Right.
Obviously. And like we're desperate for find movies that people want to watch, right? For ratings, essentially. And we don't just play comedy stuff. Like there's
You do Rambo and
we do lots of different shit. Gangs of New York, Inception, like whatever. But we don't do any black and white films ever. And the reason is that people don't watch them, even though there's like a huge catalogue of stuff. And we're like, you know, everybody's now, all these TV companies and Netflix and Amazon, they're all fighting over, like, what, movies since the mid-70s, basically? Right, so 40...
almost not even that.
40 years.
I scroll through it and it's all like 90s comedies and stuff. Like a lot of it is
but
not.
like 70s classics and 80s stuff. Yeah, but there's a limit. My point is there's a limited amount of movies that all these things are fighting over, you know, to get the rights. And yet there's a whole other like 50 years of Hollywood that nobody wants to touch because it's in black and white. It's crazy because it's not like you say. We sat here talking for over an hour about Sunset Boulevard and how incredibly good it was and how effective it was and yeah.
Well, and I've always said, like,
And maybe it'll come back, man. Maybe
you
it'll
know,
come back.
a lot of people go crazy over whether it's Hopkins's performance as Hannibal Lecter or, I mean, even Anthony Perkins as Bates or whatever. But like, there are like big classic villain roles, and I can't think off the top of my head right now, but like people playing psychos, right? But the one that's never ever mentioned is Bruno in Strangers on a Train. And to my mind, like he's like the blueprint. He's like the first one out of the gate. Like he's this weird artist who wears his dressing gown, who like lives with his mother, who has like a really weird abusive relationship with his father, who's like has all these like sad Machiavellian schemes. Like there's all this stuff going on with him, and that's why I say like go hunt this stuff out. I was talking the other day to someone, and I was saying like one of the first movies that really spoke to me, I guess, about like an interesting, diverse, almost feminist character is Grace Kelly in Rear Window. And they kind of looked at me like, they were like, what are you talking about? She's playing like a fashion model. I'm like, no, but the whole point of her in that movie is that James Stewart, in his arrogant, naive, male way, is saying, yeah, you're like me now, but, you know, you wouldn't hike up the Himalayas while I'm trying to take a picture of some rhino, or you wouldn't go out onto a racetrack and risk your life to get a picture of whatever. Like, he's always trying to challenge her. Like, I do all this stuff, you don't want to drag around after me, blah, 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 blah. And it's partly him being a dick, and it's partly him not believing that he deserves the love of Grace Kelly. But she constantly proves, time and time again, as the, like, mystery unravels and the danger becomes greater, and just what guts, verve, intelligence, Like, she matches him beat for beat and even beats him. And so it's like at the very last thing, she comes in with that little suitcase. She's like, you couldn't live out of this. You can live out of this. You know, like there's... That to me is a way more interesting adult dynamic in a relationship that I feel has feminist overtones and also picks up apart some of the arrogance and ignorance that men have and other stuff like that, without ever going, look what we're doing, folks. It's just characters interacting with each other. But like, there's stuff in those older movies that are just, you get, even in TV, even in well-written TV, you don't get characters as ambiguous and well-crafted as some of these ones you get.
Well, that's true. I mean, I suppose in a lot of ways, at the beginning of motion pictures, like they could afford to try out everything. They didn't necessarily know what would make money. Like, they knew that if you stick Grace Kelly in a movie with Jimmy Stewart and an exciting plot, will make money, and whatever you want to do around that is fine. But now it's like, no, you know, this is the character journey that needs to be taken. This is the way that this character is going to interact with this, you know, demographic, and like everything has to be, you know, because everything's monetized and everything can be examined and everything can be quantified. So you don't get that same, like you're saying, that
it's almost the moment we learned the language of cinema, it became dull. Almost.
Yeah, well, once people learned what worked and what didn't, then people stopped trying. You know, people want, like, one of the problems I have, even though I love, don't get me wrong, you know, I enjoyed the hell out of Stranger Things, and I still do, but it's like, it's fun and it's interesting, and they're doing cool things with it. But it is like, we are pleasing ourselves. We are doing things that please us and entertain us, rather than, I want to see what happens. You know, like when Hitchcock made movies, he wanted to scare himself and challenge himself. He wanted to scare the audience and challenge the audience, and he did things that he didn't necessarily know were going to come off, but he wanted to try them. He felt an urge to like try things, and I don't know that. I mean, I don't know that we should still be watching movies by fucking Scorsese or Spielberg. I just, like, yeah, they're old pros, and fair play to them. It's just like, hey, this is a good script, and I'm an old pro, so let's do it, and that's fine. But like, they're not, you know, and I'm, you know, to quote Trainspotting, they're old and they can't hack it anymore, you know, concisely fucking put. But like, I mean, I guess there's, you know.
But it's, I see, I would actually.
Fincher does things, I suppose. Fincher does
when
things
it becomes
where
Spielberg,
he's not. Fincher doesn't do things that are like, well, I think he wants to challenge himself. I think he wants to do weird, strange shit.
The only one who wants to do different things like routinely is Soderbergh.
Yeah, that's true.
But I'm not a big fan of his. And I also think
I want to be more of a fan of Soderbergh than I am. But
and I also
loved, he had that golden patch. Of
he did. Yeah, he had a
really. And The Limey and Ocean's 11, and I was like, fucking love Soderbergh films,
but he has done a lot.
That's true.
Of like weird and interesting stuff. My feeling is this: it's not that like Spielberg and Scorsese shouldn't be making movies. It's that who's writing interesting ones.
Well, actually, I think again that's a problem in that I think there are good scripts, but I think that frequently what happens is they are, as they have always have been, like beaten up into a something else. But I think that the notion of, I don't know, I think it's similar to the direction thing. I think that with a script, again, it can almost be quantified. So this is the scene where this beat happens, and then this is where the character does that thing, and then this is the mid-break, whatever. And it's like, well, these things work, and this is a formula, and that's fine, and that's great. And sometimes, formulas make great things, but. And Beethoven wrote to a formula, and Mozart wrote to a formula. They wrote to formulas, but I feel like people don't use Mozart used formulas in order to push himself, to stretch himself.
Right.
Whereas I feel like now people use formulas to write things as like that's it. It's the structure, and it's about living up to having it work. Having the structure work is the victory.
Right.
You know what I mean? Rather than using it to.
But it's really funny that I
Explore
sit here, like the movie that I watched, was it last night? Yeah, I think so, was The Florida Project. And the one I watched tonight was Sunset Boulevard. The Florida Project, which has been almost unanimously praised by absolutely everybody as somehow containing, life and vibrancy and realism and blah, whatever, right? And, reminding yourself of what it's like to be a child and But in terms of a script, and in terms of a point, and in terms of a plot, there was nothing. I mean, I'm not saying nothing, there was literally nothing. I think vast swathes of it, they literally put a camera on someone and was like, what would you do in this situation if you were this person? Just do that. And then Sunset Boulevard, and I got absolutely nothing from it whatsoever. Sunset Boulevard, on the other hand, it's written as damn near well as anything's ever been written. I mean, you could stand it up against Noel Coward or Pinter, whatever you want to, pick your Shakespeare, whatever it is. It's because it has everything. It has the one-liners, it has the quips, it has the metaphors and all that stuff. But it also has this rich, deep, weird, story, and it has the satire, and it has the characters, and it has pathos and pity and empathy and gothic strangeness, and it's just and twists and turns. It just has everything. And I've seen it a whole bunch of times. I've seen it a handful of times. And it's never not illuminating, and I can never not talk about it, and it never doesn't excite me. It's always vibrant, interesting to me. And I think that's the problem, is that there's too much reliance on
I agree.
realism. And you're like, but the point of things is not... Depicting realism is easy. It's genuine, depicting bleak realism is easy.
I agree. I mean,
Telling a fantastic genre story that also speaks to the human condition is much harder.
What's the movie where the guy, he's a film director and he's sick of making comedies and he wants to write about the real working man? He travels around America, and he gets arrested and he goes to prison, and it's got Veronica Lake in it. How's it called? It's very famous. Anyway,
you're also describing Stardust Memories and Deconstructing Harry. But
but it's about this guy. He's a film director. No, it's like a 40s movie.
Okay.
And he's sick of making comedies, and he wants to make a film that really depicts the plight of the working man. And so he travels around America, meeting all these working men, and he goes to prison and whatnot.
The film in question would be 1941's Sullivan's Travels from director and writer Preston Sturges.
And there's a bit, he's on a chain gang, and there's a bit, and he's sitting in this hall, and they're watching a movie, and they're watching some stupid comedy, and a guy falls over, and all the prisoners are laughing their heads off. And he realises that ordinary people don't want movies that depict their own lives back. They want silliness and laughter and to escape and magic and and I should remember the name of the film. It was really good. It was a really good movie, but it was that's the best argument. That movie's the best argument against self-indulgent realism, and I've always felt that about most stuff like that. Now, not all of it, because some of it is in the same way that Wilder uses a film noir structure and tropes to tell a different story, and using that structure to reach for something great. I've read and seen things that use a gritty realism and that structure to reach for something greater and hit it. Last Exit to Britain, the Hubert Selby novel. It's unbelievably grim and bleak and proper streaky beard chin, realism. But fucking hell, it was like unput down. It was so good.
Right.
And, like, amazing. And it was, again, just using that stuff to reach for something more, not just like wallowing in, like, oh, how real is it? Just as much as like wallowing in how silly something is. It's like, you know, or wallowing in film noir. It's like, yeah, you could do that, and that would be fine. But you're not using that to try and reach for something that you don't even know necessarily what it is. You know? Like, I feel like with a lot of art, like really great works of art, film, novels, whatever, if you know what you want to say before you've even sat down, then I don't know if you're ever going to really create anything great. Because anytime anybody knows what they want to tell you, like they really know, it doesn't, there's connection.
I don't want to get
anyway,
too much into it because I'm going to be talking to my friend David about it at the weekend, but...
Oh, why? What are you doing?
Black Panther, I went and saw finally. And in terms of a pretty average but fun Marvel movie, that true strength is actually in everything it's saying. Rather than the story that it's telling, it's everything it's saying. But the way it weaves it into a story that is also like perfectly enjoyable and passable or whatever, that's probably the best script I've seen recently for like a big blockbuster movie. Yeah. Just because it was able to weave in a lot of stuff that I thought was a nice fuck you to like other white-centric action films without it being a like get whitey movie or whatever.
No, that makes sense. I mean, yeah, that's what we're saying. That you use the structure of something to reach for something greater. I think what they were, you know, what was being reached for when they were making that movie is what does it mean? What would it really mean to be a black superhero?
Right.
Like in this world that we live in now, what would that mean? What would the responsibilities be? You know, what would you be worried about? What would you be excited about? You know, like they wouldn't, when they sat down to write the movie, make the movie, they wouldn't have had definite answers to those questions. They just knew they wanted to find out as best they could, you know? Those are always the best things.
He's a filmmaker that I will watch almost anything he does. Ryan Coogler or whatever his name is.
Yeah, that's true.
I really love Creed, and I really liked Fruitvale.
I haven't seen Fruitvale.
But I thought Creed, considering it's like the sixth part in a franchise which...
And it was very unexpected,
most people will say is pretty wobbly. I mean, everyone loves the cheesy ones, but I mean, most people will also say they're pretty light on plot and pretty wobbly in the middle there. You know, and then the fifth one everyone fucking hates. And then, the sixth one comes back and it's good. And then Creed is the seventh one.
Yeah.
Apart from the Fast and Furious franchises, not many franchises have picked up again at like later editions.
And not generic either. I had interesting things to say that didn't go in expected ways.
So I would watch him. I like even after Black Panther and stuff, which is a very generic superhero movie that happens to have way more stuff going on in it than meets the eye. I think he's one to watch. I really like him.
All right, let's wrap it up then.
All right, Chief. Well, look, that was a real pleasure. I loved that. Really enjoyed that. Lots of...
It was so good, some piss bloke thought we were making up a movie.
Oh, God, I wish. All right, we better get the check and get out of here. Oh, we did rather well.
Halvesies?
Yeah.
Do we pay him or offer the thing?
I don't know. But thank you, sir.
No, thank you, man. Thanks for having me. Thanks for encouraging me to go, because I really, really, really enjoyed it. It was great seeing it at that old-time cinema. It was nice and packed too. It was sometimes it's fun watching a movie like that with like a packed house. It was kind of, you know.
It was, and people of all ages.
Yeah, I wouldn't necessarily
backgrounds.
choose that, but that was a good one to watch in a packed house for sure.
All very good.
Thanks, man.
Thanks, man.
You've been listening to the After Movie Diner with your host, John Cross. Support us at patreon.com/After Movie Diner. Or I'll punch you in the teats. Rate and review us on iTunes, Earthling.
Well, back in 2011, I find a movie go and see. A film by Jim Jarmusch starring Iggy Pop and me. But when the show was over, I'd nowhere to go, so I'd end up in a bar, sipping my bourbon and feeling low. One night this wild-looking guy called Frank came over and asked me why I looked so sad as I drank. I told him about my post-movie blues, and then I saw the light in his glass eyes. He told me to go to the after-movie diner. I'm surprised you don't know there's no place finer. Come on now, let's go. Well, Mr. John Croswell, he's the man. He's the man with the beard and the man with the plan. Yeah, yes. With Jim and John and Madam Mark, tune in to French Cobbler to start. Yes, and reviews, opinions, interviews, comedy and news, Don Doler and his films, and George Stover at the after-movie diner. Now it's 5 years old. There's nowhere finer. That's the place to go. Oh, the after-movie diner. It's where I go. Oh, that after-movie diner. It's one hell of a show. I just kill that rattlesnake with skillet pan.